What is up, Instagram? What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here. We're chilling in the new bathroom again. So it's raining outside. Otherwise, I'd be on my second story deck, but it's literally pouring rain. So anyways, welcome to another, I don't know what we're calling it now, Monday night Matt McKeever Marijuana Madness, McKEEFER, Reefer, whatever you'd like to call it. Essentially, this is an Ask Me Anything where we just chill out in my bathroom. I smoke a little weed. You guys can or don't have to at home. And yeah, you can ask me anything, real estate, business, otherwise, financial independence. Essentially just a way for us to hang out, for me to make more content without necessarily having to spend a lot more time. Because as I was just complaining to Peter, well, complaining is maybe a strong word, but at least commenting to Peter before we set up this live stream was just not enough hours in the day. So anyways, tonight we are smoking a blend of God's Gift and Rainbow Kush. Not that I think that those names mean anything actually, but anyways, let's do this. Jump in the comment section with your questions and we'll do this. Hey, what's up, Brooklyn, New York? Oh, actually, one question I was going to ask you guys is what papers do you use if you smoke joints? I've always used raw papers. Recently, a fan mailed me a whole bunch of zigzags, so I'm smoking some zigzags. And I just realized I think the first time I went into a head shop, I bought raw papers, and I've just literally never bought a different set of papers since then. But I don't know, maybe there's a whole world of papers out there that I'm missing out on. And yeah. Anyways, fill me in. But I do notice they do slightly burn differently, so. Hey Matt, did you start off your partnerships as 50-50 when you were not the money partner, or did you give more share to the money partner? Yeah, Ev Murray. When I originally started my joint venture agreements, they were 50-50, were half the money and half the work. We each did it that way. That's not a really smart long-term plan because that's literally like 1 + 1 = 1.5 or 2 rather than 1 + 1 = 3, which is usually the goal with a joint venture agreement. Once I moved beyond that strategy, I forgot to put my AirPods in so that I could listen to music while we talked. But anyways, once I moved beyond that strategy, it was a 50-50 split where I was the active partner, my money partner brought the down payment funds, qualified for the mortgage as well as the renovation budget. And my part of the agreement was I would manage the manager, plus I would go find the deal, and then I would execute the deal, and ideally we would implement a perfect BRRRR where I got my business partner all their money back in under a year. But then they had to agree to give that money back to me so I could go buy some more properties. And essentially my general pitch was, hey, until I run out of your money, let me just keep buying you more free properties. Does that sound good to you? I found most of the time they were down for that. So, what's up? Yeah, everyone on YouTube, please do smash that like button. Team Raw, okay, looks like a few people smoke raw, so at least I'm not alone. I saw Mike Rosart said he's done being a landlord because of the stress. Do you think it's super stressful being a tenant? Oh, interesting. Well, Alex, yes, I think that Mike Rosart said it was very stressful and he decided to quit being a landlord. Now, if you don't know Mike Rosart very well, he kind of quits being a landlord every year. So I don't know if I believe in this. I've been kind of teasing him, calling it fake news. But yes, it can absolutely be stressful being a landlord. Especially if you're the sort of person that goes 0 to 100 real quick, the way maybe myself or Mike Rosart is. When we decide to get into something, we usually just go like all in. And so that means just kind of going full batshit crazy where you're like, yeah, I'll just take on 10 new projects this month. And obviously the more parallel projects you have going on at once, just the more constraint on your capacity there is, and I think that's really what causes the tipping point of stress that some landlords go through is when they try and grow too fast, or they grow relatively stable, but they're not building infrastructure behind them. And so I've made both those mistakes in the past. I'm sure I will make them again in the future. Just part of the human condition as well, I think, or at least like my type of human or Mike Rosar type of human, to bite off more than you can chew. Now, to your question, do I think it's stressful being a tenant? I think that's, a huge variable. So the first thing I would identify is, what jurisdiction are you a tenant in? So in jurisdictions that are extremely tenant friendly, like a California, the city of New York, Ontario, Canada, Quebec, Canada, I think that there, it shouldn't be nearly as stressful as an experience as it potentially could be in other markets that don't have tenant-friendly laws. Now, should it be stressful being a tenant? I don't know. Should it be stressful being a homeowner? I don't know. I think most things in life are going to have stress to one degree or another. So again, I don't even think we should inherently view stress as always being the negative. In fact, no growth occurs if you're not under some sort of stress or pressure, right? I mean, none of us just want to be blobs. So we're going to constantly need something compelling or pushing us forward. And so I think oftentimes that stress is valuable. So don't know if that was the direction you were hoping I was going to take the question, but here we are. All right, let's see what else is going on in those YouTube comments. I see a few more people smash the like button, so appreciate that. Is there an equivalent to an LLC other than a corporation for rental properties? Shabazz, I would really just encourage you to talk to an accountant or a legal professional. That's going to be a much better experience than just having me ramble off. But there's not going to be a silver bullet. Like, you can get into things like limited partnerships or GP, LP structures. But again, I mean, you're going to be out a lot of money to build those sort of structures. So it's probably not going to be anyone that's taking legal advice off of a free YouTube video. You're not going to spend the money to set up a GP LP structure. And that's not me throwing shade. That's just like facts. Because it's like, I think we spent 15 grand setting up ours, which we never even used. So again, there's a lesson. Sometimes the path of least resistance is the right path. Is Cashflow Tribe free for 2 weeks? Yes, it is. You can sign up for a Cashflow Tribe account at cashflowtribe.com. You can check us out for 14 days for absolutely free, no obligation. After that, it's a small monthly fee. But I mean, I'm pretty sure we're literally the best in Canada, if not maybe the world, at what we do. So 5 live training classes every week. I just finished mine for Monday night, where I just do a live Zoom Q&A. It's supposed to be an hour, but we usually go an hour and a half. We've got Canada's most robust online calculators for real estate investors. We've also got online tools to allow you to do your purchase and sale agreements, or to do your lease agreements here in Ontario. And just an easy to fill out form wizard that walks you kind of through what's required. Beyond that, we've got Canada's most robust online community of real estate investors with the most in-depth forums. And all kinds of good stuff. And we got way more planned too. So definitely you guys need to check us out if you haven't checked us out. But if you're a super cheapskate, we do have a free tier membership, which will always be free, and you're just going to have limited capacity. You're not going to get access to some of those fun bells and whistles. Or live trainings. How much cheaper in percentage terms on average is it to buy wholesale versus retail MLS in Ontario? I don't know if I can really provide a blanket statement in that regards, because sometimes it's not just about buying the property for less, sometimes it's about getting more favorable terms. So I would say it's not even uncommon potentially with some of my wholesale deals to pay similar to what you might pay on market, but the terms are going to be a lot more favorable. So maybe you get vacant possession of the property so you can quickly go in and do your strategic renovations without having to worry about trying to do cash for keys or negotiate with a tenant. On the flip side, maybe you're looking at a property that's got a great vendor take-back mortgage for a flipper, and it's going to give you 6 months, interest-only payments, and interest is set at 0%, meaning you make no payments for 6 months. So we're oftentimes not just going based on price, but we're also negotiating on terms a lot of the times as wholesalers. Now, I don't think every wholesaler approaches the game like us, but again, we'd like to carve out our own little niche. Putting honey on your paper. That sounds interesting. I feel like this is burning a lot faster. All right, we are converting a single family house to a duplex. On the street, there is no duplex. The average single family home is $350 according to you. Around how much will conversion be appraised at? $400K? Shabazz, I don't know. I would look at what single family homes are selling there for. I would look for what, if there's been any with granny suites, and then I would probably extend my range and see what duplexes are selling for in your extended area. If not, try and find another neighborhood where single family homes are around the same price point, and then try and see if duplexes are selling in that neighborhood. That might be a way to try and get some better comps. Hemp papers are usually good. Would love to know your thoughts on buying land for the purpose of rezoning. Yeah, I think things like rezoning, development, infill projects, unless you've got a inherent competitive advantage, like maybe you already have a business or a skill set in that niche, I think that honestly, those are usually red herrings. I think that most of the time when you're chasing redevelopments and things like that, you're going to spend so much time and energy, and at best, you're going to walk away with a great profit. But again, if you were to look at your return on time and how many maybe, mediocre or single base hit deals you could have done, I would imagine that the aggregate is probably more favorable to focusing on that sort of strategy than the redevelopment game. Again, unless you've got a niche or an inside track, like maybe you're focusing on a neighborhood where that's already popular. Maybe you're doing it where there's already a bunch of properties being converted into a higher density zoning. Then if you can piggyback off of that, great. But my perception is in general, projects like redevelopments, rezoning, infill, people definitely make money doing that, but I think the average investor wastes way more time than they make money doing it. All right. It's always interesting to see who makes the random request to go live with me. What's the best way to find out the price per door for an apartment building? Ravi, this is not me trying to be a dick, but finding out the price per door for an apartment building, if we're talking about a property for sale, obviously run the numbers. If we're talking about you talking to a seller, you need to go talk to the seller. If you're talking about market averages or industry averages, in Ontario, maybe reaching out to a brokerage that specializes in commercial properties like CBRE, they might be able to give you ballpark range. Otherwise, just talk to local investors and they'll usually be able to give you a quick ballpark range. And even for markets that they're maybe not directly in. For example, here in London, Ontario, I would tell you that anything at $100,000 a unit or less is probably a steal of a deal, unless it has massive deferred maintenance. Anything in the KW region, probably getting closer to $150, maybe $175 a unit. In Hamilton, we're getting to $175 a unit. Brantford, I hear anywhere above 140 probably. And again, these are for kind of getting near the bottom price point, and anything that's in perfect turnkey condition will probably sell for more. Pristine condition and KW could be 200, could be 2 and change. Hamilton is going to be 200 plus. Brantford could be 175. Windsor, again, I would use similar metrics as London, so anything below 100,000 is probably a steal of the deal. Anything Mint, perfectly turnkey, might be getting closer to $140. And in London, it might be anywhere from 150, maybe going up to 160, maybe even a hair above. Yeah. Again, obviously location, condition, all those factors come into play, but yeah, those are kind of what I would say for ballparks. How long did that take you to get to that point when you started the first question? Ooh, Michael, I don't remember what we were talking about. I'm sorry. Hey Matt, did you ever get discouraged when you first started saving? I'm about a year into saving for my first property. Hey Connor, yeah, there's definitely been ebbs and flows, right? I think the one thing that maybe I was a little bit luckier than the average, or like the average person right now when it comes to saving money, is that, like, I'm 35 right now, so if I assume that you're maybe just fresh out of university, you're in your early to mid 20s, I think it's a lot easier to compare yourself to others now, especially financially, and that can sometimes be discouraging. So a lot, because I've been thinking about this myself, and so like when I look at my financial picture, depending upon who I compare myself to, I either feel like the greatest overachiever of all time, or I feel like, man, like why do I even waste my time pretending? And so the reason that I can have those sort of extremes in my personal opinion of my own personal financial situation is based upon who I'm using as a reference group. So, you know, honestly, even 10 years ago, I didn't compare myself against the rest of the world. I compared myself to a small circle. People I grew up with, the people I went to university with, people that had similar sort of starting points as myself. Where now I compare myself just against everyone and anyone, where I'm just like, who's the best and who's crushing it the most? And you're like, oh man, this guy did an exit of a company at this price, at that age, holy shit, there's no way I could ever catch up to that. And all of a sudden you get lost in that train of thought. So I think I was a little bit luckier in my early 20s because I was mainly comparing myself to my social circle, which none of them were hardcore savers or financial overachievers, or I was comparing myself to a small group on the internet on like the early retirement extreme forums, which is all about extreme frugality. So I remember then, like, when I first started my job, I was making $33,000 a year as my base salary as a accounting student, fresh out of university. And, back then I was only comparing myself against a small cluster. Where today I would probably go online, compare myself to the top people that get a job right out of the gate at like an investment bank or doing this, that, and the other, where maybe they can push six figures right away. And all of a sudden, like, you just get lost in this game of comparing yourself. So absolutely, I've been discouraged in the past. I could definitely understand how young people today could get discouraged because maybe you're looking like, Graham Stephan is like 30 years old. Like he's a decent amount younger than myself. And when you look at his financial success, right, and what he shares on YouTube, and I honestly think he shares in a very modest, humble way, but he still shares it. I could easily see how someone could get discouraged and be like, oh my goodness, he's only a few years older than me, or he's my age, and I barely got started and he's all the way there. Or maybe you're comparing yourself to like Mark Zuckerberg and where he was at that age. I think that it's just really important to try and approach your finances. Like, it's valuable having that Rogers Bannister. You want to be chasing something, but you also need to be playing kind of golf at the same time, where you're playing against yourself. You're mainly just focused on improving yourself. So I would focus on how you're improving your situation rather than comparing yourself to others. And I think that'll make it a lot easier to stay engaged and feel like you've actually got momentum when it comes to your personal finances. So don't be looking at like how many zeros you got, but instead focus on like how this month you cut down your expenses by 5%. That to me is a big celebration, as well as if I saw a way to maybe long-term reduce my financial needs. So for me, a big part of it wasn't just about what I was making or saving, it was also about what I was spending. Because the lower my comfortable lifestyle was, the easier it was going to be for me to save up that money. So, if you're spending $4,000 a month, and that's the lifestyle you're accustomed to and the lifestyle you want once you reach financial independence, well, you need to generate like $50,000 a year. Where if you're comfortable with $2,000 a month, you need to generate like $24,000 a year. And those are big swings, right? not only in the amount of money you get to save each year because you're spending less, but also in the amount of money overall you need. And so for me, again, Connor, if you're kind of struggling on the saving journey or getting a little bit discouraged, I would focus on just, how you're improving your position today rather than comparing yourself to other people. I'm sorry that took so long, guys. I feel like I spent too much time on that question, but I hope that it provided value. Appreciate the 25 people that smashed the like button on YouTube. So I bought a condo in Toronto, thought it was a good idea. It is not cash flowing, but I made $95K from refinancing it. What's the best city I can buy a property in to purchase a cash flow property? NSM, I would really focus on obviously markets that cash flow. If you're asking for recommendations, if you're looking to still invest in Ontario, southwestern Ontario, you're going to find a lot of markets that cash flow there. So anywhere from like Windsor to London to Chatham to Sarnia, Woodstock, even Brantford to a degree. Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, it's getting pretty hard to cash flow, but you might be able to eke out a little bit of cash flow. The Niagara region, right? So St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Welland, those sort of markets, you can definitely still find cash flow. So pretty much in that entire area. Obviously, you can go further north into markets and find cash flow. The one thing that you want to be careful of when you go seeking cash flow is that you still have an overall stable, balanced market, right? So I just said southwestern Ontario is a great market for cash flow. Well, let me pick on a city in southwestern Ontario that you could get cash flow, but I don't think would necessarily make a great investment. Wallaceburg. Most of you now need to Google where Wallaceburg is. But Wallaceburg is this, small town center of like just under 10,000 people, if I remember correctly. And it's essentially been hovering around the same population since I was born. So since like the late 1980s, it's roughly had the same population, maybe give or take 10%. And so while in theory you could buy a great cash flowing property in Wallaceburg today, for me overall, I don't see any drivers of growth there. So it's not like a lot of immigrants are choosing to move to Wallaceburg. It's not like a lot of local Wallaceburgians, I don't know if that's the right term, choose to stay and live in Wallaceburg. And I don't see any current economic drivers. In fact, I think recently, like in the last decade, the municipal offices and stuff like that moved from Wallaceburg to Chatham. And so again, when you start to see even the government moving its offices and stuff out of the market, that's not going to be enticing to me as an investor. So even though I could get great cash flow in a property like Wallaceburg, I'm not necessarily going to want to invest there. So that's my caveat, because sometimes I see investors in your situation go from one extreme to another. They buy a property that doesn't cash flow at all, and then they decide to run out and try and buy property in like northern Alberta or Saskatchewan, where there's like a population of 3,000 people, one employer, and while in theory it looks like great cash flow, it's either difficult to get tradespeople and reliable property managers, or difficult to get good tenants, or difficult to rent out the property to good tenants. So we definitely don't want to just look at cash flow in a vacuum, but I do think you're wise for wanting to seek cash flow. Hey, what's up, Quentin? How long does a property take to rent? Can you start without a job? How long it takes to rent out a property is really going to depend upon the market you're investing in, right? What's the vacancy rate? The vacancy rate is going to be a great indicator of how fast and how easy or how hard and slow it might be to rent out a property. But if you're looking to get specific information on vacancy rates, I'd really encourage you guys, go check out CMHC's market survey data that they do every October. They do every October, or release every October. I forget how that timing works, but anyways, what's great about that is it's not only going to give you the vacancy rate for the city, it's also going to give you the vacancy rate in relation to the type of unit. So whether it's a bachelor apartment, a single apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, or 3+ bedroom apartment, you'll be able to see the different vacancy rates in those unit classes. And that can even just help you get even more dialed into your local market. What location are you buying in now? We're primarily just focused in London, Ontario. We will go outside of London into southwestern Ontario, but only for the right deal. And if you guys didn't know, I'm launching my bird dog program. So YouTube, you maybe haven't seen this yet. I don't know if we're going to be able to. Yeah, we've got a video this week on it. But anyways, I'm launching my $5,000 bird dog program for purpose-built apartment buildings. And essentially, it's called the Make Money with Matt McKeever program, MMWMM. And yeah. Essentially, the idea is that you guys find me an apartment building in southwestern Ontario, I end up buying it or assigning it, all you need to do is introduce me to the seller, then I will cut you a check for $5,000. And if you're curious on how much money you can make doing this, in the last year we have bought 5 buildings, and in theory, had you introduced me to every one of those buildings, I would have been more than happy to cut you a check for $25,000. So I'm hoping that randomly all my social media followers make me pay $100,000 in finder's fees next year. That would just be wonderful. So if you guys are interested in signing up, there'll be a link in my Instagram bio. YouTube, just jump over to Instagram and grab it. It'll be my handle, Matt McKeever85, because someone beat me to Matt McKeever. The sigh. But it's a generic enough name. There's lots of Matt McKeevers out there. Alright. What's your opinion on the rental market in Thunder Bay? JB, I definitely don't know enough about Thunder Bay, but if I was going to invest in Thunder Bay, what I'd want someone to pitch me is, what's the current vacancy rate? Is that trending up or down? What's the current employment rate? Is that trending up or down? What's the population growth? And I would look up Stats Canada's population projections for Thunder Bay out through 2044 or 2046. I always forget how far they went out. But I'd want to look at those things in regards to Thunder Bay, as well as understand overall what the employment base is. Now, the one thing that probably is attractive to me about Thunder Bay is I'm assuming it's a government regional center. So I'm assuming a lot of government services are clustered there, things like hospitals, post-secondary education facilities, things like municipal offices and any sort of things like that. So that can be one positive to some of those more isolated or more just off the beaten path properties. But at the same time, I'm really going to want to know what the employment base is. And if it's a 1 or 2 industry town, for me personally, that's probably going to be a big enough detriment that I may not want to get into it. And then otherwise, look at things like affordability. Now, Thunder Bay is going to have the same minimum wage as the rest of Ontario, so I assume affordability is very strong, as in it's pretty easy for your average tenant to rent, like your average minimum wage earner tenant to be able to rent a property in Thunder Bay. Good. They can do it here in London, and my bias makes me assume that properties rent for more in London than Thunder Bay, but I don't know that to be a fact. What's a good cap rate for multifamily complex? Acquiring knowledge, that actually is much more a question for yourself. So cap rates can be a good indicator of what's going on in the general market that you're looking to invest in, but it really should come down to what you're trying to accomplish. But also understand that cap rates, while it sounds like this magical thing where you get apple to apple comparisons on every property, understand that so many people calculate cap rates differently. So you need to really make sure you're comparing apples to apples. Like, some people don't include property management or repairs and maintenance or vacancy and bad debt, because what they'll do is they'll do a pro forma cap rate. And a lot of realtors are very sneaky about this, where they'll make the assumption that what it currently rents for, that you'll get 100% collection for the next 12 months, and then they'll compare it against the existing expenses. But they'll often leave out property management and repairs and maintenance when it comes to those expenses. So like the way I calculate my cap rate is dramatically different than the sort of cap rates you're gonna see marketed on realtor.ca. So usually whatever cap rate you see on realtor.ca, by the time I run my numbers, I'm probably gonna come in closer to about, honestly, usually like 2 to 3 lower. So if they're saying they're selling this property at an 8 cap rate, when I run my numbers, it probably ends up looking like a 5 cap rate to me, as in I believe the expenses to be greater or the income lower than what they're actually stating in their pro forma. All right, YouTube 34 have smashed the like button, 72 are watching. I feel like that's a pretty big gap. With VTB, do you need to qualify for conventional loans or is it completely on the vendor? Completely on the vendor. So if we're looking at vendor take-back mortgage, your credit almost never matters. And that's why, and like your total debt service ratio, your gross debt service ratio, none of that shit has ever mattered in a vendor take-back I've got. I've never even had a vendor that gave us a VTB give us a credit check or even ask potentially for a credit score or anything like that. Because again, they're primarily lending on the property. So as long as they believe that you've mitigated the risk enough, such as you put down an okay down payment, most vendors are going to be comfortable. If they're in a position to do that VTB, especially if there's either tax savings because they're able to defer the capital gains over a 5-year basis, or if alternatively they're able to structure the deal in such a way where they profit more. Maybe you offer to pay them more for that vendor take-back mortgage versus if you had to buy it in cash. We find that like the sellers never worry about our credit. We're right now in the process of negotiating like this deal's not going to come together, but I think it's a waste of time. But we're currently negotiating on like the biggest purchase that we would have done, and it's going to be a VTB. And like for what would that be? For like an 8-figure VTB, and like they honestly won't check our credit for it. But their purchase price is astronomical for the condition of the assets. So I doubt that we're going to be buying it, but even in that huge of a vendor take back, they won't actually be checking our credit or anything like that. Why do you smoke just in the bathroom? Because I'm a renter and there's no real fabrics in a bathroom, plus you got the window and the exhaust fan, so it just feels like the nice thing to do. Plus, it's just a random background. It's kind of fun, silly. It feels like I'm safely not Matt McKeever, like the real estate dude. So it just feels like I can be more laid back here. Yeah. So that's mainly the reasons that we smoke in the bathroom. Also, like there's carpet and stuff. I would hate to be the renter dick that dropped something on fire onto a carpet and then made a little burn hole, or I just don't want to be that renter. I've had those renters. When looked at a multifamily converting to duplex today, thanks for all the motivation and info. Awesome. You've got the best real estate content. Appreciate that. Awesome. Glad to hear that you're getting value. And congrats. Get out there, keep making those offers. What currency do you use when talking about money on YouTube videos? What currency? Oh, I'm always talking in Canadian dollars. Alright, I think getting down to the... Yeah, these burn way faster. I don't think the zigzag, I don't know if you're going to cut it. This just burned way too fast on me. I'm through my joint and we're only halfway through the live stream. What do you think is the most important thing to have to get approved for mortgages? The most important thing to get approved for a mortgage is to work with a competent mortgage agent, because they're going to be able to find you a solution. Where the real problem is, far too often people are going to like a lender and just trying to force themselves into the A lender's profile. And to me, that's just it's not a scalable business solution. What we need to understand when we're looking at A lenders is A lenders are Instagram. I've got like 10 people. WTF. Thank you, YouTube. I'm going to keep making eye contact with you. YouTube. So when we're talking about A lenders, one thing that we need to really keep in mind is the fact that they're designed for retail buyers. So they're designed for mom and pa that want to go buy a single family house. They're not designed for investors. They're not built for an investor. And so because of that, they don't want you really as a client. That bank employee in front of you, they might pretend like they want you as a client, and you might be important to their individual bonus. But overall, that organization was not designed to help you build your real estate business or to succeed as a real estate investor. So they're not your ally. At best, they're an ally of convenience only. And so it's really important that we be building long-term relationships with individuals that can actually be long-term allies, not just a temporary ally of convenience like an A lender is. Whereas a mortgage agent that works with a variety of lenders, and ideally a mortgage agent that specializes with investors, like our boys Josh and Aaron from the Finlay mortgage team, when you're working with someone like that, not only are they going to be able to have more resources for you, but they're going to be more engaged in helping you out of your creative problems. And as an investor, we're constantly in the business of solving problems. Hence the problems or profits model that we roll by. And so because of that, working with someone that's constantly being faced with similar challenges and problems is going to allow you to consistently get the right solutions for you. And so far too often, myself included when I was originally investing, if you guys don't know my backstory, I started buying properties in 2010. In 2014, the A lender, CIBC, told me that I couldn't buy any more properties. So then I immediately had to, I was like, well, there has to be a way. And they're like, go get a job that pays you double. So I literally left public accounting, started working for a pharmaceutical company as their financial controller, worked my way up the corporate ladder, and got that big salary so I could go buy more properties so that I could eventually quit my job. And had I just learned to work with mortgage agents, I probably could have retired so much younger because I would have bought so much more property earlier. And, definitely it's just one of those things where hindsight's 20/20. But my biggest suggestion is focus on building long-term allies. So understand those A banks, they're allies of convenience, temporary only. And so they're not in the business of trying to help you become a successful investor. In fact, it really doesn't sound that enticing to them. They'd rather you buy their mutual funds and RSPs than get mortgages on rental properties. So again, you're a square peg in their round hole. They just don't like you. It's okay. So it's just important we go find other lenders. It's good for landlord. Oh, I don't know what's. Can you buy a house as soon as you turn 19? I have the money saved and make $3,000 per month. The crib I'm looking at is $125K trailer house park thing. Hey man, the best way to find out, because I don't know exactly where you live, is go talk to some lenders and find out if they'll give you a mortgage. But odds are, if you're 19, you've got the down payment funds, and it looks like your income to purchase price ratio is probably reasonable. As long as you don't have terrible debt, don't have mountains of existing debt, you probably can get into that property. And understand that at least countries like Canada and the US, we've even got buyer programs, right, to incentivize first-time home buyers, often allowing you to get into a deal with more favorable interest rates or more favorable down payment terms or things like that. So just go talk to a lender, go talk to a mortgage agent, and find out. The only thing to understand, trailer parks or trailer houses, they might be a little bit different of a purchase, right? Because you're going to be buying the trailer, and depending upon how the land's set up, do you own the land or is it a land lease? How long is that land lease for? Does the trailer itself have value, or is it really just the length of the lease? So there's factors like that that need to be taken in consideration in your specific scenario. But outside of those sort of caveats, you sound to be in a good place. Dude, hanging in the shower with some bud. LOL. Yes, sir. This is the life. In a burr, is there any value in taking a mortgage at purchase if not needed, or is it okay to leave financing for after renovations are complete? Yeah. I don't think that there's inherently a benefit to having a mortgage on the property when you first buy it. I think most investors will at least have a perception of a slight bias that if you can buy a property in cash, the refinance will likely go easier for you. So again, I don't know how much weight I put on that, but to a degree, I think it's true. So the only other caveat, I guess, if you could buy that property in cash for that burr is if you're looking to scale your portfolio, would you be better served structuring things differently, right? So let's say you're looking at buying a property for $200,000 and you're an investor, and you've got $200,000 in cash. Should you buy that property in cash? Well, in theory, you could buy that property in cash, and now you could not have to pay the mortgage. Well, what would that mortgage interest rate cost you? Maybe you're paying 3%, maybe 4%, 5% tops. So if you're paying that 3 to 5% range, you're going to be saving 3 to 5%. But what if you alternatively decided to, say, lend out the $200,000, borrow for your buying the property, but lend out the $200,000 to another investor who maybe would be willing to pay you 10% or 12% or 16%. Obviously, there's different risks and rewards here, so that we can't discount that. But yeah, I think it's a very personal decision, and it's going to be best served to really dive deep into what you're trying to achieve long term and on what timeline and trajectory and how fast you need to be acquiring. But either way, if you're in a position to be able to buy in cash, that's a great position to be in. Very few people would regret that position. Let's see what else is going on YouTube. How many cash flowing listings would you say hit the market each month with 10% cash flow? So I think the first thing, Greg, you would have to answer for me to be able to answer is, what are we talking cash on cash return? As in, like, if I put down $100,000 buying a property and I want to earn $10,000 a year in cash flow, is that kind of what we're talking about? If that's the case, I don't know. It depends on what market we're even talking about, but if we're talking about Southwestern Ontario, if I had $100,000 in cash, could I generate 10% cash flow per year? Yeah, I could definitely do that. Because with $100,000, I could probably control about $500,000 in total assets, right? At an 80% loan to value, so $100,000 down, $400,000 mortgage, that's $500,000. So take that $500,000 rented out. Here in London, that probably lets me buy a fourplex, maybe a fiveplex, but somewhere between a 3 and a fiveplex for sure. Say a fourplex, I probably can cash flow, anywhere from $100 to $300 a month per unit. If I'm doing $250 a month per unit, that's going to be $1,000 a month cash. And that's going to be $12,000 a year, so that will exceed that. So I think in most markets where you're around the 1% rule, you're likely going to be able to cash flow at a rate that you'd find acceptable. Again, you don't have to dive deep into the specific numbers on a property, but you should be in that right ballpark. Hey, 27 years old, 70K salary, 150K in savings. That's awesome, man. What's a realistic expectation for when my real estate would match my salary in terms of income? Alex, well, one thing we definitely need to understand is whether you're looking to truly generate $70,000 a year in passive income. And if the answer is yes, then does that need to be passive cash flow? Because there is a difference in passive income and passive cash flow, right? Because a lot of investors will be paying down their mortgages and now cut into their spendable cash, but will still be technically income. And when they eventually pay off the mortgage, they'll have that in income that's actually part of their cash flow. So, but I don't know, if we're talking ballpark, right? Let's assume that you can get $200 a month in cash flow per unit, assuming that you want cash flow. Then I would simply take $70,000, put that into a monthly basis, or divide it by the annual basis of $200 a month in cash flow, $2,400, and that's going to give you roughly how many units you need. And so what do you need there? Like, I don't know, 35, 34 units, 35 units, something around that. And take your 35 units now, or sorry, yeah, 70,000, 35 units, and then just build out a business model to get there. So how quickly could you do that? If you're implementing the BRRRR investment strategy and you've got $150,000, you keep recycling that. You could probably do a BRRRR every 6 to 18 months. Let's assume maybe you average a BRRRR a year. And if you're BRRRRing a fourplex, that means we could essentially get 4 units per year. And how long is it going to take us to get to those 35? So that's going to be like 8 or 9 years. Now, if you can speed up that timeline, then all you need to do is acquire more properties or get more cash flow per unit with each property you buy. So there you go. And that assumes no new savings or anything like that either. So if you could also be saving money while doing it, then you could obviously compress the timeline. Why are you sitting in the bathroom? Yeah, we're sitting in the shower. You'll have to scroll back and watch earlier on. We discuss at length. You ever smoked the strain green crack? Probably. I feel like I've smoked every strain of weed. I'd smoke whatever weed that's in front of me. Green crack sounds familiar, but maybe that's from a movie or something as well. How does one go about getting small partnerships with owning an apartment building plus 100 units kind of deal? Is it possible to do that directly with not owning rentals? Well, one thing we should understand, right, is you can always invest in REITs, real estate investment trusts. So that would be companies like RioCan or I don't keep up on what all the publicly traded ones are these days, but RioCan is definitely one of the big ones. And if you're investing in like one of those, you can essentially get into those, like buy a trust unit for, I have actually no idea what RioCan trades for. Is it 25, 30 bucks, maybe way more, way less. But anyways, for under $100, you could probably buy a share in a real estate trust. And in theory, you now are a fractional owner of a entity that controls probably hundreds, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of units, or millions, or likely hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate assets. So in theory, you can get into it right away. Now, if we're talking about private entities, again, you're either going to just have to network with the right people and get in front of those opportunities, or maybe as an accredited investor, you could participate in certain raisings, but it really depends. So you could definitely build a multifamily apartment building portfolio where you own a percentage of it as the active partner and do it with none of your own money. But that's not necessarily easy, and that's certainly not going to be the right answer or the right solution for everyone either. But the one thing I would caution people that I see happening a lot in this market right now is just like unit envy, or just constantly wanting to one up in the numbers, but sometimes the numbers that don't matter as much. Like the number of units you have, sure, it could make for like a nice little headline, but it probably matters more what you cash flow per unit, right? Or what you get to keep, or how sustainable your business model is. So you also want to make sure that you're always investing for fundamentals. Hey Matt, when you refinance a building, once your term is up, will they look at your personal job salary? Gloria, depending on the lender, they certainly could. They'll often want to see where your total debt service ratio is, particularly if you're investing as a retail investor. So Yeah, definitely could come into play. Now, if you're just refinancing and not pulling out any new money, no, they normally won't look at your current income, or they won't be nearly as detail oriented when it comes to doing that. But if you're refinancing and pulling out equity in the form of cash, then yeah, good chance that an A lender at least would do that, or likely even a credit union. But once you get into B lenders or below, again, if we're at 80% loan to value or less, probably not. Does net operating income include debt service? Acquiring knowledge, when we're talking about real estate investing, no. The vast majority of time when someone refers to net operating income, it will not include the debt service. So it won't include principal repayment, and it won't include any portion of the interest expense either. So usually cap rate, right, is going to be your net operating income. That's going to be the number they use, and cap rate doesn't factor in your debt expense. P1, are you seeing an increase in property values in markets like London due to migration out of larger cities than Toronto since the pandemic? Ryan, I think it's too early to even speculate on that, but we definitely are seeing an increase in prices here in London. London's real estate is just on fire right now. Should it or shouldn't be? That's a different discussion, but it certainly appears to be in this moment. Part two, do you think that in the future mid-sized cities will see a population increase due to people fleeing larger cities while working remote and driving up real estate? Ryan, I can definitely understand that as being a thesis towards why markets like London would be well positioned. Adding to that thesis, I would include that London's got a medical school and 3 universities, so our number of doctors and just medical facilities per capita is going to be greater than most Canadian cities. And so because of that, again, it makes for a unique retirement community, because we've got a higher per capita specialist when it comes to doctors and stuff like that, just because we've got the medical school and we've got the 3 hospitals. As well, London's got its own little flourishing, biopharmaceutical industry as well, and a little research park and stuff like that. So certainly, that can be. I can understand why that would be attractive to an investor long term, and why you'd potentially want to invest in London because of that. Definitely, that's one of the things I take into consideration when I'm thinking about London long term. Love your content, saw your dog bird program on Instagram. Can you explain more in detail about it? Yeah, Romeo. So the bird dog program is really just this idea of make money with Matt McKeever if you guys introduce me to a purpose-built 10-unit plus apartment building that's 3 stories or less, so no elevators, in London, Ontario, or somewhere in southwestern Ontario. And I end up buying the property or assigning it. I will cut you a check for $5,000. And this year we bought 5 properties like that, so like 5 properties that meet that description. So had you been the person to introduce me to all 5 of those properties, I would have paid you $25,000. So that's the gist of it. Essentially, the idea is you go find me the seller contact information for apartment buildings that are off-market deals in southwestern Ontario. I'll do everything from there. And if you guys want to be looped in on how the deal progresses, I'll probably give you, a little bit of perspective, or at least a debrief once I end up buying the property, assuming I buy it. So yeah. And if you're looking for ballparks, like you get me anything in London, Ontario for under 110 a unit, I'm probably pretty interested. You get me anything in like the Sarnia, Ontario's, or the Sarnia, say, for under 95 a unit, you're going to have my full attention. Chatham, anything below 90 a unit, you'll definitely have my attention. Anything in Windsor under 100, you'll have my attention. Essentially like that, but it needs to be not on market, because I've already got realtors and screens and stuff like that. But if you introduce me to an off-market deal, again, it could be as simple as you literally live in a 10-unit apartment building in London, and you give me your landlord's phone number, and I call them. If I end up being able to talk my way into buying the building, I'll still cut you a check for $5,000. So more than happy to spread the wealth, because if I'm going to end up buying a 10-unit apartment building, there's probably $5,000 in play there, and hence my willingness to cut you a check. Have you ever looked at properties in New Brunswick? Seems like you can get some great cash flow there. Thank you for all your answers. Gloria, I've only taken a most, tertiary look, or like only a glance at markets like New Brunswick, just because I can accomplish what I want to accomplish in London, Ontario for real estate investing. And because of that, it just doesn't make me seek other markets. So I already believe I've got a competitive advantage here. So because of that, I'm just not looking to invest outside of my core area or competency. That's not to say that, New Brunswick or anywhere else isn't a good place to invest. It's just, I got a good thing going, so I'm not digging super deep into those other markets. What's up? Getting my first condo in Richmond Hill to live in for a year and then rent. Do you think it'll be possible to buy a rental in Windsor with about $100K equity in the condo next July when it's built? I make $77K, but I'm looking for a higher paying job. Danny, $100K in equity sounds great, but like if that's the only money you've got to put towards real estate, it comes down to, can you tap that equity? So can you actually pull it out? Understand most lenders won't let you refinance at a greater than 80% loan to value. So for me, that's going to be the likely big factor in whether you can use that equity to buy a property in Windsor. Now, if you could tap into all 100K, could you potentially buy a property in Windsor? Yeah, if you had a line of credit for $100,000, you could certainly find properties in Windsor that you could buy. In worst case scenario, get a B lender to lend to you at anywhere from 40 to 60% loan to value quite easily. All right. What are your factors when choosing a market, specifically for a house hack? Well, Tyler, it's probably going to come more down to if you guys haven't checked out Jacob Fisker from Early Retirement Extreme, look into what he writes about in regards to choosing where to live. So if you're just kind of getting started in your financial journey, as far as where you choose to live, it should really be a byproduct of where you need to commute to, so you can keep your transportation costs down. Because understand that the average person's probably spent 30-40% of their income on shelter, but then they're also probably spending about 20 to 25% of their income on transportation. So if you can really focus on those two spending categories and reducing them, that's really going to get you a lot further ahead than your peers when it comes to savings. Like, those are the two big dominoes to really focus on knocking over. So if you can knock over those two dominoes, one of the best ways to do it is to live close to where you work, close to where you frequently visit. So if you're the sort of person that has to see your family all the time, then you should probably try and live close to your family. If you're the sort of person that has to be at work all the time because either the job demands it or that's just the way you like it, again, you should try and be physically close to that. Obviously, a lot of those dynamics are changing now. I think that what's great is people are going to be more and more empowered to be able to like geo arbitrage, to be able to live in different places and yet work in another. And because of that, I think it could present a lot of unique house hacking opportunities. Like, if you can telecommute, forget even like moving from Toronto to London. Why don't you move from like Toronto to middle of nowhere, right? Or like move to like Lucknow. You could probably rent a palace in Lucknow for pennies compared to what you'd pay for your rent in Toronto. And I think it's going to be great because that arbitrage is going to breathe life into certain rural communities in smaller centers. And it'll hopefully also relieve some price pressure on the major metropolitan areas. Now, will it actually play out that way? I don't know, but we'll see. All right. All good if tenants are paying. I just complete my REMIC course, and I was wondering if there's any advice you have on how to make my first sale after I decide which brokerage to work with. just focus on networking. Like, just meet as many people as possible, get talking. Don't be the realtor that trades business cards right away. If you can specialize in a niche, that's going to set you up for success. That niche could be things like investing, it could be condos. You know, Lots of hungry realtors have had success first getting good at leasing agents, so that's what Graham Stephan did. Jeff Weibel really focused on the investor niche and built his business that way. I think just whatever you can do to differentiate yourself from the competition is very important as a realtor, or really as any service provider, but especially as a realtor. So focus on the customer experience, customer service, all that good stuff. And then just meet as many people as possible. Are there times when the 1% rule doesn't apply? I mean, like, there's lots of markets where you can't achieve the 1% rule. Do you think Montreal's a good market? Again, I'm not familiar enough with Montreal. I think there's parts of Montreal that wouldn't fit my business model, but that doesn't necessarily make them a bad place to invest. It just depends upon your investment strategy and goals. I definitely know of Cashflow Tribe members that are looking at properties north of Montreal. I forget the name of the city, but essentially it just looked like it's, it pretty much touches or borders Montreal. And it appeared like you could find cash flowing properties in that market. Again, just make sure that the underlying economic fundamentals support, long-term buy and holds if that's your strategy. Otherwise, is it Trois Rivers comes up frequently, and there seems to be investors there getting cash flow. Again, I don't know much about it. I think it's kind of southeast Montreal. I don't even know. I couldn't find it on a map, so I definitely shouldn't be giving advice about it. But downtown Montreal is beautiful. We used to go there all the time and attend Osheaga, the great big music festival there. And that was super cool. Oh yeah, Gatineau comes up as well. That's definitely one people are bringing up. And Sherbrooke as well comes up. Again, I have no idea where any of these are in relation to Montreal. I'm just naming markets in Quebec that I'm aware of that people seem to like or constantly ask me about. Who would you recommend to follow or talk to about investing in Ontario cottages, short-term rentals? Hey Dylan, so Kyle Ford would be a good one to check out. So he does short-term rentals in Grand Bend. Also, Alfonso, who was the host of the Jag Limo Tour yesterday, he does short-term rentals in Port Stanley. Who else does short-term rentals? Their vacation. Leemore, right? Leemore's been on the channel. She does them up in Tiny, Ontario. Yeah, those are probably the three people that come to mind that have been on my YouTube channel that do those. All right, guys, we're up to an hour. Appreciate everyone hanging out with me. Although this is interesting. Usually Instagram would have kicked me off by now. Did they just extend Instagram Lives? Do these things go longer than an hour, or did it just freeze and no one's even watching me on Instagram? Either way, I appreciate the 54 of you on YouTube that smashed the like button, and the 70 plus of you that just hung out with me for an hour. The first half hour we smoked weed, the second half hour I had no weed to smoke, so we all have our own struggles. All mine are first world problems. Anyways, appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Hope you got some value. If you did, all the old videos are up too from my lives on previous smoke sessions. So if you guys are like, oh man, I just joined, I wish Matt would hang out and smoke with me some more, you can just jump back and watch one of those old ones. But otherwise, I will see you tomorrow on a new YouTube video. And we're going to be signing up a new batch of deal destruction people. So if you want me to analyze a deal for you for free, That's the only way to get my personal opinion for free. Otherwise, just join Cashflow Tribe and hang out with me. I do 2 live real estate training classes. I don't smoke weed on Cashflow Tribe, but we do 2 live trainings myself, and then 3 other live trainings. So there's 5 live classes a week. Anyways, appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I'll see you on the next live stream. And thank you, YouTube. Really appreciate the 59 of you that smashed the like button. And I will see you on the next live stream as well.